I'm Kelly Pratt. I'm the founder and co-creator, along with Joy, who will be here in a little bit, of Athena Village. Athena Village is a wonderful little kind of enclave. I think of it as, remember Judy Jetson and how she would run around in her little car? I think of it as Judy Jetson kind of buzzing around the internet, and she flies into this little village and she parks as she's flying around, and she looks around and she goes, oh, I love this village. I want to have coffee at that coffee shop. I want to visit this shop. I want to go over here and talk to those people. It's like you're on the greatest road trip on the internet and you want to visit everything in the village and you maybe want to move there. That's how I felt when I visited Jackson Hole, Wyoming, back when I was in high school and went camping in the Tetons. I was like, I want to move to Jackson Hole. That's what we're trying to create in Athena Village. And when Stephanie and Amy flew into, in their little internet car, our village last summer, it was that sort of thing. And she said just the right thing. She said, I've been looking for a place and wondering if somebody had a Chamber of Commerce kind of internet village where you were supporting other creative entrepreneurs. And I was like, that's exactly what we're doing here. So that's what Athena Village is. And some of you know about Athena Village. Some of you are new to it. Joy and I are here and we can answer any questions you might have. But tonight we're here to support our village muse, Stephanie, and her wonderful muse-like leadership in creativity. And thank you so much for inviting Pam. And I've been a fan of Pam since E Squared quite a long time ago. So this is going to be very fun. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Kelly. And thank you, Pam, for coming. So you'll see Amy, we're going to leave her and her sweet little Luna, to introduce themselves if it's a good time. Just pop in and say hi. Oh, maybe not. That's okay.
Hello. Hello. Yeah, we're here. She's smacking on grapes. Hello. So
Amy is my collaborapreneur, and we run Moonfeather Hollow, where we're just so excited to be partnering with Athena Village to do this tonight. So without further ado, we want to introduce Pam. Take it away, Pam. You can start by introducing yourself, and if there's a spiel that you like to give, go for it. Otherwise, we have some questions prepared too, but we'll kind of play it how it goes.
Yes, well, I have absolutely no spiels, but I have to say I am getting such a thrill out of seeing Luna. Is Amy, that's your baby's name? She's just adorable.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it's fun to see her. She looks so interested in what's going on, but maybe it's the grapes in front of her, I guess.
No, it's the screen. It's the screen.
Yeah. So anyway, I just, they asked me if I wanted to speak. I said, no, not really, but I would be more than happy to come on here and answer questions. So I don't have any spiel. In fact, I don't consider myself a spiel kind of person. I've been asked to speak a lot since these books started hitting the big time. So I do go and I give workshops, but even there, I get people involved. I'm just not one that gets up and just talks. I mean, I express myself mostly through my writing. So no, I have no spiel. I apologize for having no spiel, but I am more than happy to answer any question that you guys want to ask.
Oh my goodness, no apologies necessary. We've got questions. That's even more fun. All right, so we're going to start with what is it like a day in the life of Pam Grout? One of the things that we often struggle with as creatives is staying connected to our muses in that daily grind kind of thing. So can we have a peek into your habits, rituals, and pockets of creativity? We read some about them, but we want to hear you talk through some of them.
Well, one of the things that really gets me motivated is a deadline. So, when I have a deadline, it's like, okay, and I've always been a big person on meeting my deadline. So I will get up every day and write or, whatever it takes. So I'm big on deadlines. But I also, as I wrote about in Art and Soul Reloaded, I think it's really important to prove to the muses, because I like to think that all great creative work, everything comes from our connection to this bigger, higher thing. I mean, that's the kind of work that I want to produce. That's the kind of writing I want to do. Not what my little brain comes up with, but, like I said, to be a channel for the higher power, the divine buzz, I've called it one of my books, just something bigger than me. So try really hard to listen, to the inner urgings of my soul. I mean, I think that's a real important thing for me. And so anyway, I just feel like I'm kind of the secretary. So my job really is just to show up. I mean, I just need to show up every day and then kind of see what's mine to come up with, or what's mine to, because I think all of us, I feel like the universe is just really needing all of us to be creative and express ourselves. And so it's looking for people to work with that will, get its messages out there through the personal, whatever person, like I have a specific thing to express as you have a certain thing, you know what I mean? It's all a little bit different. But you've heard those stories about, like if one person refused the call, like that story that Elizabeth Gilbert writes about, where she was working on that book and then she just got really wrapped up with her husband at the time's passport issues or immigration issues, whatever. He was from Brazil. And so she, after collecting all these notes and doing all this research, she just didn't have time for it. And so eventually the story went to, let's see, who was it? I don't remember now. It was some other kind of famous writer that ended up writing the very book that Elizabeth Gilbert was working on. And it was almost like the muses said, okay, well, that particular secretary is busy at this time, so I'm going to look for somebody else to do it. And they discovered it. The two of them were having breakfast or something, and they started talking. I was like, oh my gosh, that was my idea. So it's kind of cool when that sort of thing happens. So, but again, had Elizabeth written the book, it would have been a little different than it was if, I can't think of what if she'd have done it. I mean, each of us brings our own expression to whatever that creative force is asking us to deliver.
Okay. And Kelly says it's Ann Patchett. I remember that from Elizabeth's book.
I do too.
Ann Patchett. That's right. That's right.
So like specifically, like how do you show up? Like, do you sit down at your desk, or do you meditate? Is that where you like tune into the muses, or like what is it that you like do to tune in?
Well, anything. I mean, I think meditation is a really good practice for writers, because I do think anything that gets you kind of more in that frequency with the muses is always helpful. So meditation is a useful thing. And I have been a meditator for a long time. I mean, I'm not an everyday meditator. I mean, I want to be, or I think I should be, but it is something I consider very important, but I don't always do it. I'm not, some of these people go, oh, I haven't missed a day of meditating in 20 years. I'm kind of like, oh my gosh. And I guess really when you talk about my routine, it changes so much depending on what kind of project I'm working on. If I'm in the middle of a deadline, that's why I said, oh, that really gets you going. Then of course, I'm working a lot more, but other times I'm just out kind of really just being, I think I might have said, doing field work on the culture, or doing field work on life, what's out there. And so it's kind of, with my little notebook and jotting down ideas. But one thing I do, and I gave a TED talk about this, or TEDx talk about the importance of always writing down ideas every single day. Just because then you're there, you're saying, okay, here I am, use me, basically. So anyway, yes, I do often meditate, and then I guess it's just a matter of sitting down at the computer and writing. I also tend to write in a journal. I've got like stacks and stacks of these journals, those cheap journals, you can get when the school year starts for 25 cents. So I kind of started out doing morning pages way back when remember Julia Cameron's book? Have you guys read that, Artist's Way? So I had done a class with her, not with her, with a nun at a place. She was a nun at a place in Connecticut, was doing an Artist's Way class. And so I took it and I just loved it and read the book, and kind of have been doing morning pages ever since then on a more consistent basis. But even before that, I was writing in my journal. I mean, but that was the thing that kind of, okay, 3 pages, that seems like a good thing. And like this morning, for example, I probably wrote 5 pages, partly because I had to write in this crazy dream I had, that I wanted to get it down to see what it might have to tell me. So I took up a lot of pages before I got down to, just writing. And sometimes in my journal, like my morning pages, I'll write just silly stuff like lists of what I need to do today, or I don't know, just whatever comes to my mind. It's not always some profound thing, but I think if you're there, the odds that, those great messages are going to come through you if you show up. It's really pretty simple. It's just show up, show up, show up.
Exactly. Show up, show up. And sometimes that's harder to do when you maybe don't have the momentum going. So something we've been kind of trying to do a little bit of is, start with that positive proclamation. Something amazingly awesome is going to happen today. But if you're still not quite feeling it, if you don't have quite enough momentum or energy to put 2 minutes toward the creative project you're working on, then I think there's a little step in between, and it's sort of this 17-second rampage where, and we were just talking about this a little bit before we got started here, and I'll just kind of briefly summarize it. It's where if you list 17 things that excite you about the project you're trying to show up for, or more generally speaking, if you need to, you can say things like, I'm excited to work with the muses. I'm open to what's possibly coming. I'm going to show up for this project, even though I don't quite know what that looks like. And you just kind of go on like that. By the time you list 17 things of them, you might have enough momentum to sit down for the 2 minutes. And that 2-minute commitment is what sort of proves to your own creative self and the muses that you're here, you're listening, you're serious. And then by the time you got 2 minutes in, oftentimes that's enough to kind of open the flow in the channel. So I think, meditation is one ritual. Sticking with your practices, like whether that's sitting down at your computer. But if anybody else has any other ones that they know work for them, yeah.
I was just wondering, and I think you kind of answered this a little bit. When you're writing in your journal, every once in a while, I will throw in an image. So when I get a brand new journal, I'll go through it, and I don't know, does anybody else rip out things from your from magazines as you find images that you love? So sometimes I'll go through a journal, a blank journal, and I'll just randomly glue stuff into my journal so that when I get to that page, it prompts me to write stuff. Sometimes it's a poem, sometimes it's just writing, sometimes it's to-do lists. And so I was wondering if Pam, if you do that sort of thing, if you sort of force yourself with prompts or any other kind of ways to write things.
Well, I don't, in fact, it's a fabulous idea to actually glue it in, because I'm always stuffing things into my notebook. In fact, if ever I'm looking for something and I often can't find it, it's because I've stuck it in a journal somewhere, and but I don't glue it in. I mean, it's just like, it made me a bill or something, you know what I mean? But like somewhere it was stuffed into one of my notebooks, pictures, I mean, all kinds of things. That is a great idea to glue things in, especially in pages that are upcoming. So I may have to try that. So thank you, Kelly, for that. But as far as what I write about in my morning pages, rarely do I need a prompt. It always, there's just always something that can come to my head. I mean, again, some days may be harder than others, and I might say, I have nothing to say, or, you know what I mean? It might be something like that. But eventually, something else will come up. And again, what I write in those morning pages in that journal, really, often actually, I will get good ideas that then I want to further pursue as an actual project, or, maybe a blog post or something like that. So I'll, mark it a certain way with that. But a lot of times the stuff in my journal is just me, moaning and groaning about something I want to moan and groan about. It can be, it can be anything in there. There's no pressure. That's one of the greatest tips I could probably give, is to take pressure off ourselves. Like, we always want to be perfect, and so the reason that if we do feel a block and we're not writing, it's usually because we feel like we're doubting ourselves, like, oh, I don't have the wherewithal to do it, or I don't have the, what I mean? There's that little voice in our head that's telling us that maybe we don't have what it takes to do it. And that voice is common. For those of you guys that have read Art and Soul Reloaded, okay, there's 52 different little chapters, and in every one of them, I have a story from someone who's really famous, like Oprah or Steven Spielberg or something like that, and how they too doubt themselves. Lin-Manuel Miranda, I mean, everybody, it's the universal condition. I mean, that's what human beings do, is we doubt ourselves. But so I was thinking about that actually yesterday, about, they talk, oh, it's human nature. And I thought, what I want, more than to focus on my human nature, which of course is part of who I am, but also, there's another part of my nature, that spiritual nature, and that's the thing I'm trying to channel, that higher message, that higher thing. So maybe the less I focus on my human nature and more on my spiritual nature, or this other source, whatever you want to call it, the bigger thing than me, because it certainly has a lot more to offer than I probably do.
That's really beautiful. I love that. And I think that's a great lead in to the next question. Like, what is sparking you lately? Do you have any new projects that you're working on that you're hearing messages or ideas for?
You know, I feel like I've been in a little bit of a kind of a fertilizing stage, a composting stage. You know, with the pandemic, of course, I had to, or I haven't been able to travel. You know, a lot of my writing has been travel writing over the years. So a lot of that was put on hold. So I haven't been doing any travel writing. And I've been kind of percolating some things. I've got a television series that I created, and I recently got that out and was working on that. I've also been pitching a little bit a deck of cards. You know those like tarot cards, but they're not tarot cards. They're like a hay house, one of those kind of cards. But a little thing about a different way to do death, because as you guys might know, my daughter passed in 2018. It was a shocking. She had a cerebral aneurysm and just boom, was gone. It was just shocking to me. So I have really leaned into you know, these other dimensions, the higher self. So that has been a real big focus of mine over the last couple of years. And for if you guys are reading the book Art and Soul Reloaded, I mean, that book I dedicate to Taz, the most creative person I know. So, you know, it's been a big blow. And so I've been kind of you know, I guess recalibrating everything since she has passed. But I do have a card deck. When she passed, the most amazing, or actually a reader from Germany who was reading Art and Soul Reloaded, you know, I posted on my blog about Taz, and she said, you know, your daughter was beautiful as a flower, and, you know, butterflies are the windows to the soul. She said, for every week this next year, I'm going to paint you a flower, and I'm going to blow you a glass butterfly. And, you know, she did it. She sent it to me on Saturday. And I thought, well, yeah, you know, people say things. This woman, she did that for 52 weeks. Every single Saturday, I would get a beautiful flower that she had painted for Taz, along with a little glass butterfly that she blew. I mean, I was just blown away. And that's actually what inspired the card deck. Is here's these 52 flowers. She ended up auctioning off the actual paintings, and then she gave them into the 222 Foundation that I started in honor of my daughter. But anyway, we still have the digital print, and that, you know, will be the back of the card. And then on the other side of the card are just these stories, you know, about our connection with the other side. So, I mean, there's everything. I mean, some of the ones I did, like Carroll Burnett, her daughter died, and, you know, she feels real connected with her daughter. So there's just different stories like that. I haven't done all 52 of them, but that's one of the things I'm working on. Again, my television series. And then I've also got a little thing I'm been working on called the Ego's Playbook. And what it is, it's the way, it's like, how coaches come up with these strategies. Here's what we have to do to defeat the enemy, right? So this is basically like the ego's, hey guys, here's how I own you. I own you by, you know, telling you, you know, you should doubt yourself, you know, just all the different strategies. So it's like the playbook against the ego. So that's another thing I'm working on. So anyway, those are kind of the projects that have captured my attention over the last year.
Those sound like amazing projects. Fantastic.
Well,
and one of my next questions is to tell us all about the 222 Foundation. But I want to kind of open it up to see if anybody else had a question about, because I'm pretty excited about this deck you're working on. Do you have an idea of when it might be available?
No, I mean, I'm still
at the very beginning.
I'm looking for a publisher, actually. So I'm in the process of pitching on that. So yeah, I don't have any actual assignments right now. It's just I'm more in the pitching process. You know how it is with creating. I mean, I think the creation of it is the most important thing. But then of course there's the pitching stage, more the marketing part. And the marketing is the part I'm not into at all. That's what kind of nice to have the publisher to do that. So are all of you guys here doing projects? I mean, is that all of you guys are in the middle of a creative project? Because I'd love to hear about your projects as well. Are you guys writing books? Are you painting? What are you guys doing?
What a great question. Okay, let's open it up to who would like to share what they're working on. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
I mean, I'll share my main project now, besides this little rascal, is this season of Wings and Whispers that we're doing. So we're just building our community in Moonfeather Hollow, and we're doing this spring it's just all about spring and connecting with the muses, and it's really about everything you're talking about. It's about how do we stay tapped, how do we stay tapped in, tuned in, turned on, inspired, and so we're just like creating articles every day. We're like kind of mapping our creativity with the moon, and yeah, just finding inspiration all around us. So that's like my big project right now.
Oh, that's wonderful. And is that an online community as well?
It
Mhm.
is. It's another mighty network. Yep,
Oh, okay,
very
all
similar to
right.
Athena Village. Yep.
Ah,
We're just
excellent.
all about mythical muses and like the fairy realm a little bit. And,
Oh, wonderful.
we kind of just went way out there with with the imagination, and just tapping into like your spring wildling, you know, your younger self. Like, how can we let that essence out to play more often? And so,
Like, for example, the quest that we just put out last week was a Pixie portal quest. And Amy created these great like print and color and cut Pixie portals. And so people are posting their pictures now of how they actually did it, and they went and like stuck them onto trees or onto journals or onto their phone case as reminders that those portals are two-way doors between them and the creative muses, if they remember to pay attention and listen and watch for
Wow.
inspiration wherever it strikes. And then there's just something fun about, you know, bringing in that whimsical element of it and helping people recapture that childlike playfulness, that the pictures we're posting are exactly as you said, and as exactly as Mary Jane was telling us before the call started about how she led some groups, you know, to go out in the woods and stomp around and do, be little fairies, create things, forage for craft supplies in nature, and just really get in touch with that inner wildling. And so we're already seeing adults being way more playful, and that is super fun.
Oh, that's great. I just heard a thing the other day about, you know, the word adulterated. You know, we have unadulterated. So it's like adulterated means something pure got a little something in it, so it's adulterated. So, you know, that's like, so is that adults, you know, so like it's pure, like I love the whimsical, the children, the whole thing. I think that is really beautiful. In fact, you know, what kid says, oh, I don't know how to paint a picture, or what kid says, I don't know how to build these Legos.
Yeah.
I'm not feeling it today. You know, so I think you're really onto something about going back to that childhood. Like Picasso said, my goal is to stay like a kid all my life, or something. I'm totally paraphrasing. I don't know what, but that was the whole idea, you know, that to be as a child, children don't think about it. They just do it. They listen to whatever's coming up for them, their intuition. So wonderful.
I will share what the project that Joy and I are working on right now will launch in April. Several years ago, I live in an artist community in St. Paul, Minnesota called the Schmidt Artist Lofts. And several years ago, I was sitting with one woman is an author and a librettist, and another woman is a chef. So two creatives. And I was like, I don't know what my medium is. And they both looked at each other, and in unison, they said, your medium is people. I was like, oh, you know, and I dabble in other things. I publish stuff, and I dabble in greeting cards and all sorts of stuff. But Athena Village is my medium. And the project that Joy and I are working on, it's the second annual 30/30 project, 30 women telling 30 stories. And it'll launch in April. And last year it was the Get Your Groove Back project, telling stories of 30 women getting their groove back, and right in the middle, right as soon as COVID hit. And this year it's about defining, refining, rebooting, or reclaiming your mojo. And what mojo is, I found it years ago, found a definition of mojo, which is your essential coolness. And so that's kind of my creative project, and Joy's creative project is getting these 30 women to say, this is how I am reclaiming or rebooting or defining what my essential coolness is. And so far we've got women from all over the world, actually, and from the age of 21, I think, is our youngest. And into their 70s as one of the women. So it's, all ages, all races, all parts of their lives. And so that's my creative project. And I don't know, Joy, I think you kind of feel the same way, that that's sort of our creative project. And we ask for things like, what's your mojo? What gets your mojo working? What music gets your mojo working? What's your story? Give me a picture that shows you with your mojo. And so it's sort of like I don't know, that's our creative project in the village, which it's very fun. Yeah. Stephanie's one of our women.
Well, and I know there's some other folks in here who are artists and painters, and I know at least one of them is an herbalist concoction elixir maker. So if any of you feel like stepping up and sharing a little bit of your projects, I bet it's fun for Pam to get a glimpse of what other people are doing, just because the variety is fun. Anybody feel?
Or post in the chat if you don't feel like talking.
All right, so I'm going to go back to the 222 Foundation, because that's an ongoing creative project of Pam's. And she mentioned her daughter Taz, and this shocking change of life circumstance and transition for her, but she's still very much in touch with Taz. And my heart fills with such connection and empathy on that, because I lost a sister suddenly in a snowmobile accident, and I'm connected with her in similar ways. And so when I'm reading your work, I'm relating to those stories. And I just think what you're doing with the 222 Foundation is so beautiful. And so for anybody who's not quite up to speed, will you tell them why it's named 222? And then give us a sampling of a couple of the projects that 222 has funded and taken care and moved forward and brought to fruition.
Well, when Taz was in junior high and Facebook was kind of newer, she had just gotten on Facebook. She created this little Facebook group, The Amazing Awesomeness of 222. I have no idea where that came from, but that's what she did. So all of her friends kind of knew her as having this connection with 222. So like if somebody go, how much is that, that book or whatever? And she'd go, $2.22. Or they'd say, what time is it? It might be 5:52. She'd say 222. So it was just a thing. She was into 222. So that summer, again, as a travel writer, I took her with me to London. Our hotel room happened to be 222. We went to Alaska. Again, our hotel room, 222. So it was kind of this weird coincidence. So from that point on, we would always joke or send pictures to each other of 222. So it was just a thing. And then right after she passed, I was scheduled to go with Tribes for Good to India. And and so after she died, it's like, okay, I'm going to start a foundation in her honor. It's all about changing consciousness, about creative expression. It's about all the things that she stood for. But anyway, the first year, she died in October, 1 week after her 25th birthday. Again, I can't tell you how shocking this was. And I was already scheduled to go to India with this Tribes for Good. And, I'm like, how can I go? How can I do this? The bottom just fell out of my life. So I called my one of my best friends from college, who probably is my best friend. I said, hey, because she had expressed an interest in going to India way back when I first got invited, back in the summer when life was still normal for me or whatever. But then it ended up being close to Thanksgiving, so she opted not to go. So I said, hey, Mary, I know this is a huge ask, but if you would go with me, I think I can still go, to India. So we went, we did the Tribes for Good thing. And then we decided to do a little touristy thing. So we go to the Taj Mahal. It's one of the 7 wonders of the world. So, hey, you got to do it right. And I thought, it's going to be kind of cheesy, whatever. But anyway, we get there. And the guy told us this is a beautiful monument to love. And this mogul built it for his wife who died young. And her name was Mumtaz. And it took 22,000 workers, 22 years to build this thing. So it's like, there's this 222. So anyway, I ended up leaving some of her ashes there. And then after that, we leave the Taj Mahal, and not too far away was what's known as Shiro's Hangout. It's a bunch of women who are survivors of acid attacks. In India, and I think some other countries, the husbands get mad their wife didn't produce an heir, or for whatever reason they throw acid on them. And so these women, literally their faces would melt. Really. And usually when that happens, they would go into hiding. But the Shiro's Hangout, literally, they're out there, they're giving, they're serving, which to me is what we all really want to do. So they're making tea and they're giving it all for totally free. People usually leave donations, but they were in the process of moving to a new location at the time we were there. So the first year, I mean, she died in October. Every year on 2/22, February 22nd. So that's not very long to get, the pitches and that kind of thing. So I just thought, okay, we're going to give the first year's money to the 222 or to the Shiro's Hangout in India. And then of course the next year, we did take applications. We had lots of them, more than 100. And we decided to plant a forest, a Taj Grout forest, to help combat climate change with 2,222 trees, also in India. Then we built, although I'm not sure, because of the pandemic, it happened like in February, the money was given. And there was a little difficult getting to go to Nepal, but we funded a school, a library in Nepal. So that's why. And then we also did a project about random acts of money, as this woman who would fold these dollars and leave these messages for people. And so she was doing that in Washington State. It's called Random Acts of Money, 2222 Random Acts of Money or something like that. And then during the pandemic, we also did a little stay-at-home dance. We encouraged people, like the first 22 people to send in their stay-at-home dance, some crazy dance. We would send $222 to their favorite charity, which is smart. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. So we did that during the pandemic. And then this last year, we just funded 3 more projects on February 22nd. So that's basically what we do. And again, these are projects that, like I said, one of the missions we believe is that all people long to be creative and generous. That is what we really want to do. So we want to help fund these creative projects that maybe don't get the attention of the media or whatever. And we also want to change consciousness. Like if we are really going to make radical change in our world, we first need to change the consciousness, because as long as consciousness stays the same, you can, throw all the money or whatever you wanted, but it's just going to eventually come back, because we know that life forms around our thoughts and beliefs. So it's really important to change consciousness. So that's another, we look for projects that do that. And again, with the Shiro's Hangout, the changing consciousness was the fact that these women who used to be in hiding felt like they could go out and they had this to give. They were beautiful, even despite what society had told them they were. So that was a change of consciousness. The school in Nepal, it's for girls, and so they're going to school. So just things that change, how we look at things, because the way I see it, there's a lot of things that need to be changed, and really more than resisting or changing, it's more about, we need to imagine it doesn't have to be the way it is now. It can be so different. Everything's the way it is now only because we believe it's the way it is now. Even our economic system, which is, going through all kinds of people at the moment, that's just a plan that somebody came up with and we all bought into it. Everything in life that we see is just something we we decided was the way it was, but because everybody buys it, and then we think it's actual, this is the way it is, but it's really just a product of our beliefs. And so with imagination, that's why creativity is so important. So anyway, that's a little nutshell of what the 222 Foundation is. So yeah.
You get me so excited when you start to talk that way too, because I just feel such passion around this subject about this consensual reality that we all live in. Is consensual in this third dimensional sort of way that we can imagine and innovate and change and transform with changes in our consciousness, changes in our actions, opening up to creative solutions to things. I can get going on that. So I love everything you're saying, but I want to come back to if people wanted to donate to the 222 Foundation, do you accept public donations? Is it a nonprofit charity that way, or is it?
Yeah, and I think there's a link on my website for that. I mean, I'm not out actively seeking donations, but
I
some
know
people
you're not,
do.
and you're so sweet. You would never mention it, which is why
Yeah, well,
I am, because some of us are big-hearted and
They
want
send donations. I don't know if you guys know Karen Drucker's music. We were going to do a big 222 benefit concert. It was scheduled for April of last year, and of course that got canceled. And then we had it rescheduled, and I think it got canceled again. So anyway, so there's still that possibility down the road. But for the most part, it's kind of a thing for me to do with my money, I guess, really. But yeah.
Right, but we can check out your website if you want to learn more, because It's good work. It's good, important work in this world.
Thank you.
Before I go on to the next question, though, I'll open it up to see if anybody has anything on that before we move on to the juiciest question
Oh,
of
boy.
all. What is it about your work that gives you a deep sense of meaning, fulfillment, or purpose? And I feel like it's the 222 Foundation for sure, right? I mean, obviously there's that connection. But you personally, and you've already expressed it so well in your books, I hope that you don't take this question like you haven't already communicated it, because you have. But there is something so powerful about hearing it in your own voice as well. So even if you're telling us all the things you've already written, just give us from your heart, what is it about your work that gives you a deep sense of meaning, fulfillment, or purpose?
Well, you know, I feel that I'm doing what I was put on the earth to do. And I think that alone gives you a sense of purpose, right? So there's that. But also, I am so blessed in that I hear from people all the time that tell me my work, my books changed their life. Now, maybe that's an easy thing to say. I don't know a lot of these people personally, but I do know that every time I write a blog post, and this is kind of a cool thing to think about, you know, on the website or on my little back door thing of my website, it'll tell where these, and people from like 40 countries will be responding. So I feel like I've sort of created this little tribe of people who, not like you guys have done, because yours is a little more, mine's more just happened to come together. I didn't, you know what I mean? Yours is more planned and purposeful, I suppose, than mine. But I do feel good when people tell me that my work has, you know, really affected them in a deep way, and they'll tell me like specific stories, not only kind of change their consciousness, so my work helps change their consciousness. And so again, I think that's been really meaningful. Again, just being able to do what I love to do. I've always liked to write. I was one of those nerds that loved to read, you know, when I was a kid in second grade, I'd read something like 256 books. They made a special award for me. So, you know, when you start reading a lot, you start thinking, well, maybe I could do that. So I started writing when I was really young, like even in second grade, I would illustrate these books and I would write. So I just always, in fact, I feel so blessed that I was able to find that, because, you know, a lot of people, oh, what do I do with my life? I mean, that's just a question that's so common. Everybody wants to know that. I've always kind of known I didn't have to take those career tests. I mean, I may have taken I have taken Myers-Briggs tests, you know, things like that, just because it's fun. But yeah, I just always knew that's what I liked to do. And I mean, how lucky, how blessed I am to be able to make a living, to provide, you know, provide for myself. I was able to provide for my daughter and I by writing, you know, through my writing. So that was really good. That's not to say there weren't some really tight spots. You know, since E Squared became this huge #1 New York Times bestseller, I don't have those tight spots anymore. But, you know, certainly as I went along, and that's part of the really interesting thing is that I just kept doing it, even though there were, you know, conventional wisdom would have said, you need to get a job. I mean, that's what we're told, right? We have to work really hard. We have to, and I mean, I do work really hard at what I love, but I mean, when you're doing what you love, it doesn't seem like work. I mean, yes, it takes time. Yes, it takes discipline, but it's fun. I mean, it's like, that's what I do. Like people would say, well, what do you do when you retire? Well, like, well, why would I ever retire? I'm doing exactly what I love to do. Now, it has really slowed down for me during this year of pandemic. I've been, you know, like I said, recalibrating, recalculating, really ever since Taz passed. But still, it is my passion, and I'm blessed that I've been able to support myself and my daughter, and now the 222 Foundation, you know, with my wit and my craft. So yeah, I feel very, very fortunate for that.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's wonderful. All right. Next, we want to talk about your possibility posse. We're curious, like how many people are in your possibility posse? How do you kind of connect and spark each other? What are the ways that you communicate and interact with each other? And what kind of advice or thoughts do you have about those of us who are still connecting and building and attracting our possibility posse toward us?
Well, that was just a name I coined, but
And I love it.
Yeah. Well, I have three main ones. And one of them, of course, is the group that I text the blessings to every day. In fact, just the other day, we were counting up, and we've been doing this for 7 years. I mean, that's kind of amazing. Every day, you know, these blessings for 7 years. So that's one of the posses. The other two, of course, I mean, my big ones that have been really influential in my life have been groups that are here in my hometown. And, you know, when I'm not traveling, I usually always go. One of them meets twice a month. We call ourselves spiritual entrepreneurs. And, you know, all of us have an interest in, well, working for ourselves and, you know, using more spiritual techniques, I suppose, rather than, you know, your standard business, although some people use that too, but, you know, the most important part is the spiritual part. So that's one of them. And we used to always meet together over breakfast, but then since the pandemic, we've been doing Zoom calls. Occasionally we'll go to one of the girls' backyards, you know, if it's warm enough and we can be far enough away and that kind of thing. And then the other one is that we meet weekly, and again, these vary from around 10 people, you know, in both of these, so it's pretty small. But I also feel like, okay, like for example, when I went to Omega Institute for the first time, and I've been there 3 to give workshops, but the first time we were kind of like a little possibility posse, and we agreed that every month when the full moon came out, we'd go out and dance to the moon, and then so we were connected by that full moon dance that we did. And now that's been, I don't know, 5 years ago, 6 years, I'm not sure how long that was. And I have to admit that I don't always do it every full moon, but in the beginning, you know, we did that. So that's another way of forming. We had a little possibility posse that way. And really, it's just a term I made up. Any tribe, any group, any whatever, but where you feed each other. And again, I feel like this conversation of possibility is the most important thing we can talk about. Again, it's our imagination. We don't have to settle for what we see now. So to me, the possibility posse is committed to talking about what could be, what we can imagine, not about what's wrong. I mean, there's 10 million groups to talk about what's wrong. Let's fight, let's lose weight together, or let's, you know, fight climate change together, or let's, you know, whatever it might be. I mean, there's plenty of groups like that, and I'm not, those are important. But these groups are really about what's going right. What's possible here? I always talk about problem state and possibility state, and so much of our culture and how we look at life is problem state. Some problem, and we're going to fix this problem. I mean, that's our focus in life, is fixing the problems. But with possibilities, you start looking at what could be possible. You start, you know, coming up with what could be instead of what is, because what is only what is, because we've been looking at it that way for so long. Again, the power that we have within us is so remarkable, you know, the energetic frequency that we put out there, and it can be changed. But the first step really is recognizing that it can be changed. I talk a little bit about the 4-minute mile. You know, they you know, when the first guy ran the 4-minute mile, then people go, oh, wow, it's possible. And then a lot of people start running it. And so that's what I think it's important for creative groups like this to do, to talk about what could be possible, because once one person does it, then other people can do it too. And so we have to get it that this can be different, that this can change. Oh, it looks like Luna's unhappy. So precious.
She is a sweet cherub. Does anyone have any questions for Pam? Feel free to put them in the comments if you're not wanting to go on unmute, but jump in if you do. While you're thinking about it, I just want to point out that the books I have of hers today are Think and Grow Rich. We did a book club on that last summer, and we'll do that again because that was a lot of fun. And there were so many games in here we didn't get to. We only did, I think, 5 of the party games because we did the 30-day, where our focus was more on that. We are currently doing this year, all year long, 52 weeks of Art and Soul Reloaded. We just finished week 11. And you'll see that article is called Jumping Over Molehills, which matches up with Pam's section here is Get Down and Dirty is the name of it, and talking about how we really need to get into what we're doing. The best way to complain is to make things, is the quote she starts it with out from James Murphy. What I love best about this section is that we're letting go of the pretense of art being something that is so intimidating. We're just making stuff. And so one of the ways, besides approaching it from a playful, creative point of view, is also looking at these quick pockets of creativity. We've talked a lot about what can you do in just 2 minutes or just 10 minutes, and we've focused a lot on that so far. But we're only 11 weeks in, guys. We've got so many more weeks ahead. So if you haven't already joined us, we're meeting monthly to talk about it on Zoom, but I'm putting out articles weekly in the Athena Village that kind of highlight some of what she said and then sharing some of our own stories and things like that. And then the other one that I want to make sure everybody knows about, I'm sure most of you have heard of E Squared. I've got that one electronically, so I'm not going to hold that one up to you. But the Course in Miracles experiment, if any of you are familiar with the Course in Miracles, it's a thick, heavy, difficult read I read in 1994, and I don't think I could have done it if I wasn't in my 20s, because it was like it's I don't know, it's a barrier in and of itself because the language is so heavy and thick. And Pam has beautifully and brilliantly brought it into a more approachable level of open. You can be very open-minded and comfortable with the language because it's so accessible. And to make it even more accessible, this year she started an app, and Amy and I got that on our phones, and that has been super great and helped us. So when we're talking about those little tools and things that help us with our momentum, thank you, Pam, from my heart, for providing so many tools that have truly helped us. And Amy and I wouldn't be where we are today without it. So this is my opportunity to say thank you.
Oh, well,
from my
thank
heart.
you. Thank you. That's really kind. Yeah.
While I was chatting, did
Yeah, so
anybody have
fun.
questions for Pam?
Yeah.
I'm curious, just out of curiosity. So when the world kind of opens up again, like where are you excited to travel to?
Well, I'm
Typical
going to,
Sagittarius question. Sorry.
It is very Sagittarius.
well, I have a lot of places on my bucket list. But I am going to Arkansas next month for just an Airbnb to get down to Bentonville, which has an amazing art museum, and they have a lot of good trails, and it's within driving distance, so I'm going down there. But I'm probably going to go back to Italy, perhaps later in the year when things open up. My sister and I had planned last year to spend a month in Italy. We're going to rent a place and do that. So, that could be back up on the table. Also kind of going down to Argentina and Chile. So nothing is definite at this point, but I'm open to anything. I mean, one of the things about my life that's been really fun and great is that I really do try to be open to what come up. You know what I mean? What could be possible? Because the more open you are to that, the more it can happen. By also being open by not saying this is the way the world is, like saying, hey, could it be different than this is one thing, but also being open in my time and my schedule and saying, what's mine to do? What am I meant to do today? And I wrote a blog post about this the other day, and it's been a few months now maybe, but it says, what would a being of light do today? Because if you really see yourself as the being of light that you are, and you are, everyone is, what would that being of light do today? When we ask, the kind of questions that we ask ourselves in the morning is really important. Well, the kind of questions we ask ourselves at all times, if it's like, how am I going to get through the day? You're going to get a whole different answer than what would a being of light do today? So that's always a good question. But again, light fills all spaces. Light, grows food. Light does so many things, and light. And that's who we really are. So anyway, I don't know how I got on that, but so I don't know where will I be going, but I definitely will be traveling soon.
I think many of us are looking forward to some other pursuits opening back up for us soon, aren't we?
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions for Pam, or did you muster up the inspiration to share with her what you are creating? Because remember, she's a creative just like us. Granted, she's a little more famous and has some books under her belt and some great career things under her belt that maybe we don't necessarily feel like we have the claim to step forth and state what we're working on. But like all creatives, she's inspired by other creativity. So please feel free to share with her before we wrap up. What are you working on? Yes, Mary Jane.
Well, I'm not really working on anything, but I have a lot of ideas. And I think, Pam, you were talking about that, or someone was talking about writing down ideas. And I'm a Sag as well. And sometimes I'm good at starting things and not completing them and such. But I feel to just be able to write down all those inspirations and play with them. Now, I was telling the group earlier that, I'm retiring in 2 weeks, and I'm really looking forward to being able to spend time creatively. I do have an idea for I don't even really want to call it a game. There's a really interesting book I read called The Journey Home by Lee Carroll, and it's kind of a parable, the parable of Michael Thomas and the Seven Angels. But one of the parts in it, he goes to these houses and he learns all these things about himself. But in one of them, he gets a map. And while he's on his journey, he gets lost. So he pulls out the map, and the map is basically blank. But in the middle, there's a red dot, a small red dot, and it says, "You are here." And then it shows him like within 100 yards all around him. And it gave me the idea for some sort of a choose your own adventure kind of thing, but along a spiritual bent, and of course, I get all caught up in the details. What's the format going to be? Blah, 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 rather than just the idea. But I think it could be really amazing, because no matter when you pull it out and work with it with other people, different things are going to show up. So it's really about allowing what's going to show up rather than planning it, because I'm such a planner. And then I thought, no, the allowing part allows for so much more to appear. And I think that's part of what Pam's books are about too. You kind of put it out there and then let it go. So that's
beautiful. I look forward to playing that game. We're seeing that board, so let me know.
Okay, I will. Now that I've spoken it,
that's the first baby step right there.
Yep. Yeah, and I've actually had it inside for I can't tell you how long. And I also had an idea for the experiential part of it, which there again, I get caught up in the details of a choose your own adventure experience, and take a place in a park or a forest or something like that, and have different kind of stations. And every time you get to the station, you have a choice to pick something and to go somewhere and to do something else. It's kind of like a scavenger hunt, but it's not a scavenger hunt. Those are the kinds of things I like. So those are the kinds of things I feel would be fun for other people like me.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me.
Thank you for sharing that, Mary Jane. I just love it. And doesn't it feel good when you hear other people's ideas? And it's a little scary when you're expressing your own, but that's part of what this space is all about. So, Third Thursdays, that's what we're doing together. We're gathering here, we're sharing the ideas that scare us a little bit. We're making them real, because thoughts become things. We're voicing them, we're encouraging each other, and it feels good to hear other people's ideas, because it kind of sparks our own, and we start to build this momentum like, oh, so she's doing this, and I had this thought, and maybe it grows. So anybody else have an idea they want to share? We've got a few minutes before our time is up for tonight. We love hearing creative ideas. Anyone? A vision or a dream of I could if I would, or I would if I could, and for whatever reason right now you feel like you can't, but who knows, maybe you could. What if you could? What if it's your unicorn opportunity and you could just make it happen?
Another good question, and maybe you guys already do have your projects and your current projects. I think projects are kind of ongoing. But if you're kind of trying to decide on a project, one of the questions I think is important, you guys have probably already talked about this, but what did you love to do when you were a kid? Again, we were talking about, that innocence of children and just, making, they don't think about it. I just read an article, I think it was in Forbes or one of those business magazines. And so there's this tower exercise that they do in some of these workshops where you have to take spaghetti and marshmallows and erect a tower or a structure or whatever. So they put it to all these engineers, they put it to these corporate people to do it. And of course they built their towers, but you know who was the best at building these towers? It was like a group of third graders, because they didn't have all the ideas about the way it should be. And I mean, these were like engineers, people that have gone to study, how to build things and do all this. And they were outperformed by these, I don't remember, I might have the details a little bit wrong, but it was kids, some kids, and they did this. So I just really again, what did you like to do when you were a kid? And what did you give up when you said, oh, I've got to get a job. I've got to take care of myself. I've got to take care of my family. I mean, what was it that you surrendered when you started believing that you couldn't do it or whatever? So when you go back to those dreams as a child, that often is where a lot of the, sweet stuff is.
Good things to cogitate as we move forward.
Huh?
Okay. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Pam. This has been a true delight.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for being creatives and for doing the work that you do. So keep it up, guys. Together we can make a difference, right? Together we can, create something different.
We truly can. Lovely. Okay, well, we'll stick around and chit chat for anybody who's available and wants to just kind of informally hang out. But thank you all so much for joining us. For those of you who were expecting to be done at a specific time, feel free to jump off now. And join us if you're not already part of our regular Thursday group. We've got about 5 or 6 of us who meet regularly, about 10 altogether, kind of in and out. But I see some new faces here tonight, so that's exciting.
Okay, well, goodbye, everybody. Thank you so much. It was been fun
you.
to meet you all. And for those who were daring enough to tell me your project, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Night.